folks. This is your friendly neighborhood Mr. Thomas, and I am going to cover Chapter 9, Putting Clips in Motion in the Adobe Premiere Pro CC 2017 and 2020 Classroom in a Book textbook. Now, one of the things that you may or may not be aware of is that in Premiere, it doesn't just do editing work, video editing. It doesn't just do audio editing and mixing work, which maybe we'll get a chance to talk about it later on, but it also does motion graphics work. Motion graphics work. Motion graphics work can be thought of as basically creating elements, or that means shapes, or using letters or numbers, and really moving anything around on the screen. You can move anything around on the screen and make animations, really complex animations, to be honest with you. It's part of what you would do in a more extensive program called Adobe After Effects, this whole motion graphics business, or this animation business. But there's a lot of work that you can do in Premiere. The great thing about Premiere is that if you are working on something, like say you want to do an animated lower third, those are like the words at the bottom of the screen when you're watching a documentary, or you wanted to do a really quick animated logo, it's not necessary to go over to After Effects, a much more robust program for this kind of work. To do it, a lot of things you can do in After Effects. Okay, another thing that you also want to bear in mind is that the concepts that we're covering in Chapter 9 really can be applied to anything you do, whether you want to animate text in Premiere, like make text fly from one side of the screen to another, or if you want to make a picture in picture where I have a full screen image, a video image, and then I have a smaller video image that's inset, and I want to animate that smaller image, move it around, or I want to change the relative sizes of the two images. That's something also you can do when you use the animation tools in Premiere. Okay, so remember, as a review, remember anytime we edit a clip to the timeline, we call it a sequence clip. Anytime I have a clip in the project panel or the source monitor and I have not edited it to the timeline yet, we call that a source clip. Okay, so in order to animate anything at all in Premiere, you have to get it to the timeline or the sequence first. So that means you could only edit sequence clips. This means that you can edit sequence clips that are video clips that you have just edited from the project panel to the source panel to the timeline. It also means that you can animate text clips, because of the fact that when you create text in Premiere, it creates a specific type of element in the timeline called a text clip. Text is, of course, writing on the screen. You could animate that. Okay. You can animate any geometric shapes that you either bring into Premiere, say from Photoshop that you imported, or there are a limited number of geometric shapes and figures that you could make in Premiere. Okay, so any of these things you can animate, but they must all be edited to the timeline and made into a sequence clip first. Okay, so there are 4 major ways that you can animate sequence clips in Adobe Premiere Pro. The first way is that you can set keyframes for default motion effect properties for a sequence clip. Properties like, for example, scale or rotation or position can be animated in the Effect Controls panel for a selected sequence clip. And I'm going to show you an example of that right now. I'm going to just give you a kind of a preview of the Effect Controls panel in Premiere. So I'm going to go to my Documents folder and my GPTC folder and I believe it's in Basic Video Editing. Is it? Okay. Or have I moved it to, yes, I do believe I have moved it to my intermediate video editing. Let's see, is it there? No, it's not there either. Let's check out my, yes, I believe it is here. I have so much stuff, sometimes I have to jar my memory to remember where I put it. I know it's somewhere very organized. It's just a matter of finding out which organized place I put this particular folder. I'm looking for the folder that I downloaded from the server, from the Peach Pit Press server, that has all the media that I will be working with in Premiere for when I'm working in the textbook, all the media and the lesson files. So what I'll do is I'll try my intermediate editing folder. Nope, it's not there either. Let's go to my 2600 basic editing folder. Here it is right here. It was my basic editing folder, okay? So I'm gonna double click on it and I'm gonna go to, this is chapter 9, right? I'm gonna click and select chapter 9, click open. Okay, you probably know this already. If you see the convert project window, that means that the last time that this project was opened, there was a more recent version of Premiere Pro available, or more accurately, this project file was created for an earlier version of Premiere Pro. That's not a problem. It's just asking you, do you want to save the old version of it, but also make a copy of it that is compatible with the current version of Premiere Pro that you have. For example, this file that I'm opening was created for Adobe Premiere Pro Creative Cloud 2017. However, I'm running Adobe Premiere Pro Creative Cloud 2020. It's asking me, do you want to create a separate version of this file and update it so it's compatible with 2020? Usually the answer to that is yes. It gives it a different name from the original file that's for 2017. It just adds an _1 behind it. It'll save it in the same place. Click OK, and it'll get you started. Of course, you know the deal with offline media. Anytime you see the link media window, that means that the source clips in the project panel have been disconnected from the media that's in the assets folder, and I've just got to tell Premiere where this media is. I'm going to start this process by hitting the locate button, and then I'm just going to simply go to my assets folder. I can spin that down. What am I looking for? Make sure you know what you're looking for first. I'm looking for the 0102 Shogun 4K file, and that is in the assets folder, in the video, audio, and audio files folder, in the Andrea Sweeney NYC folder. Okay, so let's go to the video, audio files. I'm just going to spin down the triangle there, and I'm going to go to the Andrea Sweeney NYC folder. I can click on it one time, okay, because that's the folder that my file is in. So I click on it when I find the folder, and then I'm looking for 0102 Shogun 4K. Let's make this column a little longer by dragging out the separator between the name column. I'll do it again. Oops. The name column and the file path column. You can look for your which away arrows, I call them, left and right. You can see you can make the column wider. I'm looking for 0102 Shogun 4K. There it is. Click OK. And not only will that one relink, but any of the other ones that it can relink that are in the same area, it will relink. I have one here that's in a different area. I'm gonna click locate. It's highlighted as map JPEG. This one is in the graphics folder. Usually if you have to go into an entirely different folder outside of video and audio files, for example, and like go into the graphics folder, which is like where they keep the still images, many times that's when you have to go in and individually link them. Okay, and then everything else was okay. Found everything else. Good, so we're good to go. All right, so essentially, you can see I have the effect controls panel open here. I'll just show you. The effect controls panel is in the same frame by default as the source panel. It's just on a different tab. When I'm in the editing workspace, and it's set to its default layout. You can see it's empty right now because I don't have anything selected in my timeline. I have a clip here called Snow 01. If I select that, you're going to see that my effect controls panel, something, some material is going to pop up into it. Okay, you have different properties for this selected clip that are now available in your effect controls panel. For example, under the motion category, you have properties like position. That's where this clip, I know it's full screen, but where this clip is in X, Y space, like X coordinate, Y coordinate space. The first column is X, the second column is the Y value. Just like in your old classes in high school or elementary school when you had to use a Cartesian coordinates. That's how we track that. We also have a property called scale, which is how big or small something is. Okay, so 100% is full size, but if I make that 100% smaller, as you can see, I can click and drag on it, and it's a smaller number, and it gets smaller in the frame. Okay, rotation, of course, you can see that's a property. If I drag on the rotation numbers, it rotates around in a circle. We all know that a circle is 360 degrees, so I can rotate it going clockwise, which would be making the numbers more positive from 0 degrees to say 65 degrees, or I can rotate it counterclockwise. So that would give me a negative degree value, negative 75 degrees. That negative tells you that you rotated it 75 degrees counterclockwise or to the left. Okay. Your anchor point, what an anchor point is it is the center of the selected sequence clip. Okay. And if I select the anchor point property and I zoom in, you can see a circle with a cross. That is the anchor point, okay? And that is the point around which this clip will rotate. See how it's rotating around that anchor point? It's almost like it's like a propeller right in the center. It's rotating around the anchor point, okay? The anchor point is the area around which the which the sequence clip will scale, and also the position of the object is determined, or the position of the sequence clip on the screen is determined by the anchor point. Because if I'm at 640 on the x-axis and 360 on the y-axis, what part of this clip is at 640, 360? The top left corner, the top right corner, the bottom left corner, the bottom right corner, or anywhere in between? Where is it? Well, in order to be very precise, they say that the anchor point, the very center of that anchor point, is located at 640, 360. So this anchor point is located at 640, 360. However, this upper corner is not 640, 360. It's another XY value, as is every other point on the sequence clip. Okay. All right. So we also have other parameters. I'll skip down to opacity. That's just basically how solid or transparent an object is. Now I have my program monitor set up so that empty background will appear as black. Okay. If I were to output this, like when I'm done editing, if I were to output this exact image right here, yes, it would have a black background. However, while I'm in Premiere, that black means it's transparent. So it's not literally black. Some people like to use the transparency grid. If I click on the settings menu, that's the little spanner or the little wrench right here, and I can go down to transparency grid, and now it just shows me that anything that has a gray and white squares, that means that it's transparent. Okay, some people confuse black for really being black as a black background in Premiere, and that's not what it is when you're in Premiere. Okay, that's not what's going on. So a lot of people like using the transparency grid, especially if you're coming from Photoshop or Illustrator or another graphics program. Some people just like the transparency grid. And even if you're working in Premiere, there will be some times where, especially with animation, there will be some times when using the transparency grid is more effective, especially if some of my elements that I'm moving around on the screen in this program monitor, because that's like the final version of what you see on TV. You see your object animate there. If it's black, then you don't want a black background and a black object because you won't be able to see what's going on. So I'm going to turn off my transparency grid for now. And then time remapping, which really is not a common property. It is a property of the clip, the sequence clip, but it's not a property in the same sense as a position, scale, rotation, anchor point, and opacity. Um, the position, rotation, scale, anchor point, and opacity, you will change that far more often than you will use the time remapping parameter. Although you can use that too. We covered that in a previous chapter. So this is the effect controls panel, and essentially I can set the parameter values to a static value, okay? Or I can animate. I can animate a parameter, okay? So for example, say for example you wanted this sequence clip to rotate. Okay, first of all, you have to ask yourself, how much time do you have for it to rotate before this clip leaves the screen altogether? Like that. Well, if I look at my sequence window or I look at my timeline, I can see that this snow underscore one clip is only so long. As a matter of fact, if I go to its out point, it's about 5 seconds long, just under 5 seconds long. Okay, so whatever I'm going to do as far as animating this snow underscore one clip, it needs to be done in 5 seconds. All right, so essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline to you the general steps for doing any kind of animation in Premiere, in After Effects, and in pretty much every program that allows you to do animation. That would include 3D animation programs, other digital compositing programs, color correction programs, audio editing programs. We have I think it's a 5-step process for creating an animation. Okay, and it goes like this. Okay, and actually, you know what? I think I'm going to animate the position value first. I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to scale this clip down a little bit more. Make sure you have the clip selected. That's a gotcha that people mess up on. Sometimes I do too. Make sure the sequence clip is selected so I have the correct sequence clip loaded into the effect controls panel. Let's scale it down a little bit more. It's 52%. Let's scale it down to right about here. I'll return its rotation to 0 degrees, which is straight up. Okay. So let's say I want the clip to move from the extreme left of the screen to the extreme right of the screen. Okay, that would be an animation that involves position. Okay, so the process is this. Step 1, set the parameter that you want to animate at its starting value. Okay, so I'm going to move it straight from left to right. So that means I'm just going to use the X value here. I'm going to scrub it backwards from 640 on the X axis and 360 on the Y axis to 144 on the X axis and 360 on the Y axis. So it went straight to the left. Okay, so this is my starting parameter. I also need to make sure that my starting time is correct. Some people set the time first, which is actually a pretty good idea. But in this case, you know, I could set the starting parameter for position and the starting time in that order. So at time 0, my position value is 144.0 on the x-axis, 360.0 on the y-axis. That's how I would state what's going on right now with this clip. All right. So I've set my starting time. I've set my starting parameter value. What I want to do is tell Premiere, okay, right now I want to start an animation. How do I do that? I click this button right here, the stopwatch button right here. This is called the toggle animation button. Looks like a stopwatch. The toggle animation button, and that's how you tell Premiere. It's almost like shooting a starter's pistol at a race. It's saying that, hey, at time 0, I want my sequence clip in this case to be located at 144 on the x-axis, 360 on the y-axis. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to advance the time. Step 3, advance the time to a later point in time. Like say, for example, I want it to come to a stop at about, say, 3 seconds in to the clip. I know the clip is 5 seconds long. So if I drag my playhead in the timeline to 3 seconds, or I can drag my playhead into this little mini timeline in the effect controls panel. It's the same thing. Notice that this snow_1 clip is the same snow_1 clip that's selected in the timeline. Okay, so I change my time to a later point in time, And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish by changing the parameter that I want to animate to its final value. So I said I wanted this clip to move from the left part of the screen to the right part of the screen. That would involve changing the value of the x coordinate or the x ordinate for the position parameter. So I'm just going to scrub it until I can visually kind of see, bam, where it is. Okay, so essentially what I did is I set the, I'll explain what this is in a second, but I'm going to jump back to my first keyframe using the go to previous keyframe button to jump back to where I started. Notice that I'm back at 0000 in time, and at time 0000, the clip is at 144 on the x-axis, 360 on the y-axis. Okay, I'm going to jump to my next keyframe. My next keyframe, that's where I make, a keyframe is where I make changes to a parameter at a particular time. That's what a keyframe is, and this button lets you skip all the frames in between this keyframe and the next keyframe and jump straight on that diamond keyframe. So now I'm at 2 seconds and 23 frames. That's 1 second shy of 3 seconds, full 3 seconds, okay? And at 2 seconds and 23 frames, I set my parameter value at 1140 on the x-axis, and I kept my 360 on my y-axis. You can see that diamond designates I have a keyframe. It's kind of like a thumbtack. It's saying that at time 0000, my position value is 144, 360, and at time 2 seconds and 23 frames, my position value is 1140 on the x-axis, 360 on the y-axis. Okay, so a keyframe is just basically locking down those parameter values at these specific times. That's basically all animation is, because if I can tell Premiere my starting time in starting parameter value and my ending time in ending parameter value, it will draw all the in-between frames that it needs to get me from my starting time and starting parameter value to my ending time, my ending parameter value, and I can show that to you by dragging my playhead back to the beginning of the timeline and pressing the spacebar. Okay, so as you can see, I'll do that again. As you can see, the clip moved from left to right over the course of those 2 seconds and 23 frames. Another thing that you notice is that if you look closely at the clip still plays. So the cars are still passing by the clip. So not only do I have animation of the clip itself, but the clip is still playing just like it would if it wasn't animated at all. Okay? So I think I'm going to end this first section, which was kind of an introduction right there. And just to review, what I did is I explained to you how to create an animation by setting keyframes for different parameters in the effect controls panel for a selected sequence clip. And that's the first type of animation we'll talk about. When we come back, we'll talk about other types of animation, and we'll eventually talk about these keyframes more and how there are many different types of keyframes. See you in the next episode.